the English opening, 1c4. It is so named after Howard Staunton, widely considered the greatest player in the pre-Paul Morphy era. GUKESH immediately responds with the most principled response, 1e5. We have a reverse Sicilian, and a variation that is quite a rare guest at the highest echelons of chess. This bishop b4 line, previously in a blitz game against Aragaisi, a5 was selected by GUKESH. After bishop e7, it already appeared that Ding was a little bit outside his comfort zone. He chooses the second most popular move, and after a set of totally reasonable theoretical moves, GUKESH plays the novelty f6, setting up a London system-like pawn triangle, preparing to put the bishop on e6, and later in the game expand in the center with d5. This is also prophylaxis against d4, which can be met with e4, followed by d5, a really annoying concept that prevents Ding from achieving an ideal central setup. So they continued their development. Some very interesting decisions were made here. GUKESH correctly refrains from grabbing the pawn on c4, instead prioritizing his development, grabbing space on the queen side, and an excellent flexible move, rook e8. Ding plays very creatively to open up the center, which makes sense because he has the bishop pair. GUKESH responds very accurately, and now the truly interesting stage of the game begins. This rook on e4, not something that you see every day out of an opening. Ding finds this move, knight c2, stabilizing his position. We were very surprised at GUKESH's response to this move. At several moments, he seemed to miss a more concrete approach that would have yielded a big initiative, knight e5 in this position. And then the bigger surprise came a little bit later. First, it was Ding's turn to falter with knight f3, and knight d7 was a move that probably no commentator in the world could understand until GUKESH demonstrated the genius concept that was behind this devilish move. Instead, bishop g6 would have probably yielded a pretty sizable advantage. Once he retreated, Ding, unsuspectingly, plays the move rook b1, pressuring b7 and stopping knight b4, and missing the genius b5. This is all based on the intermediate move queen b6 check, after which GUKESH picks up the b5 pawn. He has a pawn majority, and suddenly Ding's pieces look a lot less coordinated, and GUKESH's pieces look a lot more imposing. In fact, White's situation immediately becomes critical. So instead of rook b1, it was necessary to start with queen d2, or maybe even move the king aside. But who could have thought that such a quick turnaround is in order? Ding finds an incredible defensive idea, bishop to d4, an intermezzo of his own, hoping for queen b8, rook a1, and picking back the pawn with a good position. But GUKESH correctly determines that he needs to put a knight on c5, except he chooses the wrong one. He plays knight a c5. This is the moment that will be discussed for so many days to come. Knight dc5 would have yielded a decisive advantage. Rook moves away, bishop drops back, and these passed pawns should decide the game. The knights defend each other perfectly. Instead, by putting the a knight on c5, he gives Ding Liren a chance to attack this knight formation. Bishop h3 is now in play, and just in general, Black's coordination is much worse. GUKESH making another mistake, and now, after bishop b3, setting up the threat of d4, Ding had an incredible winning move, completely unfindable, which was knight e1, setting up a million threats, but chief among them is the idea of playing d4 and blocking off the tactical resource knight takes d3, which no longer exists. Instead, he played knight d4 and secured an extra exchange, but it turns out that this option gave GUKESH tremendous practical counterplay, and after a further series of moves, it was actually GUKESH who declines a repetition, causing me to fall out of my chair with queen a2 check. Ultimately, though, the position remains dynamically balanced. As crazy as it is, there are so many lines to explore. But the players demonstrated great precision. Ultimately, a queen trade was initiated, and this trade came at the cost of White's extra exchange, which Black picked up, leading to a dead draw on opposite colored bishop endgame. This is where the players shook hands. A draw. A crazy, crazy game. GUKESH probably the more disappointed one, but let's take our hat off for the players for yet another absolute dogfight. What a pleasure this was to watch. And the best part, the match is tied 4-4, John, and we have the biggest action yet to come.